Hey, this is Zachlog the Great, and I am here tonight with my friend Nate
Hello.
and with Jagi Lamplighter. Also, say hello.
Hi there, everybody.
Jagi is the author of several young. Is it all young adult or mostly young adult?
No, I have two series. One is just straight out kind of fantasy, urban fantasy, and the other one's young adult.
Okay. The author of the first one of the one series, the Rachel Griffin series, is available for free. I am going to include a link to that in my description. That is Rachel Griffin and the Unexpected Enlightenment of Rachel Griffin,
Right.
and that is the first of a series. Um, and let's see. And we are getting together tonight to talk about Rudyard Kipling's poem Dane-Geld. Two announcements before we get to that. The first, my usual announcement: if you like my channel, if you enjoy these discussions or the other videos I do, please consider supporting me via Subscribestar. That is subscribestar.com/Zachlog-the-great. There will be a link in the description. And for the second announcement, I am going to let Nate handle that one.
Yes. I too have now started a YouTube channel, recording and releasing some videos. My first one, Dangerous God, is actually on YouTube as we speak, under that title. And I'll be releasing another one shortly. I have just short talks about what the God of our fathers and frequent introspection is teaching me about life, theology, philosophy, and just sort of the hither and yon that we all run into in our daily lives. So if you'd like to check it out, I'd love to have you.
And I will also put a link to Nate's video channel in YouTube channel in the description of the show. So, having covered those, I am going to put up the. Here, just a moment. I'm going to put up the poem, and we can go ahead and read that. Can you guys see that?
Not yet. There it is. Yes.
There.
Okay. So, Dane-Geld by Rudyard Kipling, A.D. 980 to 1016. It is always a temptation to an armed and agile nation to call upon a neighbor and to say, "We invaded you last night. We are quite prepared to fight, unless you pay us cash to go away." And that is called asking for Dane-Geld. And the people who ask it explain that you've only to pay them the Dane-Geld, and then you'll be rid of the Dane. It is always a temptation for a rich and lazy nation to puff and look important and to say, "Though we know we should defeat you, we have not the time to meet you. We will therefore pay you cash to go away." And that is called paying the Dane-Geld. But we've proved it again and again, that if once you have paid him the Dane-Geld, you never get rid of the Dane. It is wrong to put temptation in the path of any nation for fear they should succumb and go astray. So when you are requested to pay up or be molested, you will find it better policy to say, "We never pay anyone Dane-Geld, no matter how trifling the cost. For the end of that game is oppression and shame, and the nation that pays it is lost."
Excellent. Excellent poem. Excellent reading.
And that is Rudyard Kipling's Dane-Geld. So, as you are the guest tonight, Jagi, would you like to start us off? What are your first thoughts on this?
Well, this is one of my favorite Kipling poems because I think that this is a policy or a truth, however you want to look at it, that is true, and that we tend to forget in the modern day. I think we see in our culture and in our politics of our nation many, many cases of paying for things that we don't actually want more of. And we've kind of forgotten as a nation that when you pay for something, you get more of it. So that's one reason why I really like this poem. I mean, in addition to the historical charm, of reminding us of the days of the Vikings, there's this kind of a warning to us as modern people that we have to be careful about falling into the trap of thinking that, we can just pay for a problem to go away, and it will.
Yeah, and it's and like you're taking a little broader there, because there's also just it's this, you could consider this a more specific instance of the general case of you if you subsidize something, you get more of it.
Right. I mean, I think we could talk about it. I mean, it's clearly in the specific. Like, let's say, I feel like Obama giving money to Iran was a case where, we really shouldn't be doing that. It's kind of a Dane-Geld type case.
Stop stealing the talking points.
Sorry about that. But I think we can also see it broader too. Well, let's talk about, go ahead if you had talk about that first, then we can go on to the broader. I have some thoughts on the broader, but we can start with the specific.
Well, yeah, I mean, the specific, like focus thing is that appeasement never works. I mean, from, the Dane-Geld paid to the Vikings to, the Sudeten Germans to the Golan Heights in Israel. If you give your enemy something, they're just going to say, oh, sweet. So all I have to do is threaten them, not even kill them? Nice. Hey, go ahead and give me some more land. Give me some more gold. I mean, that's how you end up with the Normandy. You keep paying enough Dane-Geld, eventually they build houses, and you're like, you know what? How about y'all just own that? And instead of fighting us, you fight whoever shows up.
Yep.
I think that's the only time where somebody really benefited from Dane-Geld, because they were so bad at getting rid of the Dane that they ended up assimilating him.
Well, I mean, they kept coming, and then they had to solve the problem another way. And assimilation is a totally different way of solving your problem. But yeah, I mean, I think that, in our country gives out a lot of money to other countries, and in some cases, I think maybe it's going to good use. I know there are people who feel that there was a period where we were kind of paying them to not be communists. Maybe that worked well, maybe not. I don't know. But I think there might be a lot of cases also of us giving money to things that it really are kind of a Dane-Geld situation where we're putting money out and it's really not getting us what we, as a nation, it's not benefiting us as a nation. And I don't mean, hey, we're giving money to feed the poor and that's not actually benefiting us personally. I mean something more like, appeasing someone or paying, to get a certain result that we want, and we're not really getting that result. Along those lines.
Well, and
I mean, the thing that keeps the third world in the third world is corruption. And all you get by spreading money on corruption is more corruption. That's all you buy with your money to a corrupt system. And so all the money in the world will be wasted and squandered and or stolen if you filter it through those systems. So, I mean, they don't need, those people don't need money. They need a reckoning.
Well, and another thing, like if you take this, take it down from the scale of international relations, if you scale it down a little bit to like our own politics, there's when someone is supposed to have said or done something terrible and offensive, and they have this big angry mob coming after them. A lot of people think, oh, I'll tell them I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And I'll apologize for this. And, and there are there are cases where you should genuinely apologize when you've done something wrong. But, there's also a certain kind of case which is disturbingly common today, where apologizing, no matter how sincerely, only ever makes it worse. And it's a, you know, you can disagree with him on any number of other things. I do think I think it's hard to argue with Vox Day on how SJW attacks work and how you should respond. I think
you're right. He has a real insight into that, and I think you're absolutely right about the apology. If you're with ordinary people and you do something wrong, and you actually think you've done something wrong, there are times when it's appropriate to apologize. But the SJW situations are almost always people apologizing where they haven't done anything wrong, and the apology does nothing but it's almost like magical consent, like you have a spiritual protection around you, and by apologizing to them when you didn't do anything wrong, suddenly they've got you. Because, so many people have been kind of dragged down by apologizing when they didn't do anything wrong. The most recent one that was so outrageous was that actor who said that 3-year-olds should not be required to decide what sex they're going to be. And then he got Mario attacked. Yeah. And then he apologized. Like, you have to not apologize when you're not wrong, because all you get is more attack. They never respect you because you apologize. I mean, I can't think of one example where someone apologized for these things and they lauded them, They took them in. They said they're okay now. They just go, it's more like they go, okay, we'll stop attacking you because you're the flea on the bottom of our shoe. You know what I mean? It really isn't producing the outcome that they promise it's going to produce.
This whole thing is analogous to the most, micro level of, hostile negotiations, which is schoolyard bullying.
Yes.
I mean, all these big outrage mobs are just like school bullies, and they're coming to shake you down for what you got.
It's exactly what it's like.
I mean, look, if you are, if you set yourself up to be a victim, you will be a victim. If you kowtow before the bullies, you will continue to be bullied. If you give them your lunch money once, that Dane-Geld will be paid again until you or somebody on your behalf punches that guy in the face.
That's why the group who I like to call the Impuritans, because they have the Puritan attitude, but their values are all upside down. They're the SJWs. They're just bullies. The Impuritans. They're just bullies. They're just using peer pressure. And the funny thing is, a lot of the people I know who are involved and act that way are people who would have 10, 20 years ago told you that peer pressure was the worst thing and the thing you should never give into, and you should stand up against it and be your own person. And they just like cave to the peer pressure of wanting to be part of this group, So they just rush around and they bully people. All this stuff where, all this SJW stuff is people being bullied into trying to get them to accept some bad, usually impure idea. I mean, a couple of them are merely okay ideas, but a lot of them are actually kind of vile. And they're bullying, And so I've actually started on social media of trying to point that out, and I'll say, I don't appreciate bullying, and this is a bullying behavior, rather than answer their ridiculous claims, because if you answer their claims, then you're forever in the mire.
Well, that's the other thing. Like,
stupid people, they drag you down to their level and beat you with experience.
Yep.
Well, and that's another thing. With I've found it took a while to realize this, but I found, like, trying to say, oh no, I'm not X, Y, or Z. Like, the problem with that is you are arguing on their terms,
right?
And you can't. That doesn't work. That's not going to get you anywhere. You just have to reject the frame entirely, and say, this is I don't think that's a meaningful word. Sorry, that doesn't mean anything.
And I'll tell you, you young guys might not have seen this, but let me tell you just a little bit about what life was like when I was younger and why this worked at first, this behavior. So when I was growing up, there was a lot of emphasis on tolerance and trying to overcome racism, but it was the opposite of nowadays. The attitude was as if, imagine you thought most people were probably racist, so if somebody wasn't, you thought that was great. So anytime anybody made some effort to be tolerant, no matter what it was, everybody was really encouraging. So a lot of people my age really wanted to be tolerant. And when I see them react to SJW stuff now, you can see they really are. They really want to treat everybody fairly. Yeah, they might make some stupid assumptions that nowadays are called, by some stupid name, but they're decent people. But what that did was it rewarded you. So you wanted to do it more. You actually got rewarded for being tolerant. So you wanted to be even more tolerant. You wanted to be even kinder to people. And in that world, when somebody said to you, hey, you're this or you're that, and you would defend yourself, people gave you a fair shake. They'd go, oh, I guess you're right. That thing you did that I thought wasn't nice, maybe I see now why you did that. I see you weren't trying to be mean with that. And that was it, So around 2007, and I remember the day, I don't know the date because I didn't know the date, but I remember the day that several different friends of mine who had been previously these kind of liberal, hey, nothing you can say will offend me type guys, just switched like a switch going off and turned into Puritans. And that instead of being willing to discuss things, instead of being willing to, be complimenting people, they switched to this, you'd better toe the line or we're going to accuse you. And this idea that, nowadays you get called racist, for instance, for things no human being in the history of time has ever been able to avoid doing. Everybody has to make some kind of assumptions when they talk. And right now, if you make assumptions that are colorblind, or if you make assumptions that are not colorblind, they've found out how to call both of those things racist. So, as you say, we now have to step back and we can't defend ourselves anymore. We have to just draw attention to their bullying behavior or merely just cut off the conversation or something, because the old way, which was when you were talking to a person who was on the level and you tried to defend yourself, it just doesn't work. You're as you say, it's a Dane-Geld playing. You're buying into their story.
So in our last talk, Nate and I, it was Song of Defeat, and we had to have a couple of word clarification, and I think there is one in this poem too that it might not be a bad idea to remind people of. Word meanings change over time, and so when you are requested to pay up or be molested.
You're right. Yes, very true.
That one's gotten narrowed down a little bit more, and it used to just have the meaning of harassed, bothered, right, annoyed.
Yes.
Although in the case of the Vikings, it might have meant what it means today. To be fair, it might have
meant those things, but it was a lot broader. It wasn't just your women and your children. It was also your houses, your cattle, your horses, your landscape, your crops, your body, your everything. And it wasn't. It was straight just violence a lot of the time. You're right. It was also molesting the women. But you're right. The word there has a broad meaning, and not
it is interesting to see how. Yeah, it is interesting to see how these things change over time.
It actually is. And it's kind of, sometimes it's bad, but sometimes it's kind of like things like, I'm trying to think of some, like, I can't think, but there's a bunch that are related to being in a bad mood or a good mood, and they're not coming to me now, like humor and things like that, that used to just mean, there's a whole bunch of them that used to just mean an emotion, and now they've been associated with a particular emotion. Like humor usually means funny or good humor nowadays, things like that. But it's interesting to watch how the words change. But I think the one you're talking about has actually been relatively recent in its change. Last couple of decades or so. But talking about the social side of Dane-Gilding, there's something I almost want to call pity guild, which is our society has become entirely taken advantage of. We're held at gunpoint over. And I'll give an example. So I remember some years ago that I was reading an article about unwed mothers. And this was back when unwed mothers was still kind of rare. I mean, now they're like everywhere, but at the time it was still a weird thing. And the article was on what country has the most unwed mothers. And I thought it was going to be some really poor country where, you know, the law had broken down. And it was Sweden. And at the time, Sweden was like I was a liberal back then. Sweden was like our ideal, you know. And I couldn't believe it. And then I stopped and I thought, they're paying more money to unwed moms than any other country. And they're getting more of what they're paying for. And that was a real turning point for me in my life. But in our country, we pay for lots and lots of things that we feel sorry for. Oh, it's so sad that the woman doesn't have a husband to help her raise her kids. Oh, it's so sad this. Oh, it's so sad that. And what are we getting? We're getting lots and lots more of it.
That's none of our fault that they don't have a husband. I mean, and that's the thing. I understand the pity. I understand the wanting to help people. But the best thing you can do in that case is tell them to deal with it.
I mean,
like, for instance, my son gets out of bed because he says he, is too hot, or he just something felt funny, right? He just didn't want to be in bed. And he doesn't want to go back to bed. Kid, it is 10:30 at night. Go back to bed. But Daddy, no. You're not going to. Look, I'm going to give you a hug and tell you go back to bed. There's nothing wrong with you. Deal with it.
Let me tell you a sad story along those lines, even though I completely agree with you. So my youngest son used to get up out of night and come out, and we wouldn't go back to bed, and he wouldn't go into bed. And he was about 2 or 3 at the time, probably about 2. And, I went through very similar things to you. And then I found out, this is so sad, his brother was biting him, but neither of them could talk. So I didn't know about it. So he was being terrorized every night, But that's actually a good example, because in that case, there was something we could do. There was a problem that could be solved. We found out eventually. We solved it. But if we just, let him come out and we didn't look into it.
Problem, you're a racist.
Exactly. And let's say in your case, let's say every time you coddled him and let him, stay up, well, the long-term result would be he wouldn't learn to put himself to bed. He'd be up way too late every day. It wouldn't be that he'd be going to sleep happy. You know what I'm saying? It's okay once or twice, sure. And I think it's okay. I think it's good to have certain. I think there's a lot of charity that works better if it can be done at the local level.
Well, that's where all charity comes from.
Your local
the government
church
cannot be in the business of charity. That is not the government's job.
Well,
but
the
thing is that people are less charitable when the government gets in. People are worse off. Because one thing, if you have a hardworking society, they tend to be able to support themselves, and there's enough left over that if there's someone in genuine need through circumstances not their own making, the community can pitch in and say, hey, here, let's help you out. And people are more generous because of that. But these people that support these government programs are the most miserly bastards out there, because like, well, why should I give to these people? The government will do it.
Well, look at the difference between the two following cases. One's a real case. One's just I'll make up a hypothetical. So my hypothetical case, you have a problem. You need help. You go to the local, let's say, St. Vincent de Paul Society, which is a Catholic charity or something like that. They can look into your particular situation. If you really do need help, they can try to help you get back on your feet. If maybe, or a real one that I love is there's a charity in our larger area here, about an hour or two from us, called Mary Shelter. They run 6 houses where they take in pregnant women. They're the only place within hundreds of miles will take in a pregnant woman who has children already to try to keep them from having an abortion. You can stay at Mary Shelter for up to 3 years. They help the women get jobs. They help them get educated. They help them with childcare while they get on their feet. It's exactly what you want a charity to be. They help them one-on-one. They help them with families. And they just try to get these women into a better situation. But they do it one-on-one, and they require the women to take on little tasks. They get little, they do certain tasks around the house, and when they do that, they can go to the store, quote unquote, that's run by the shelter, where they can pick out clothes or diapers, and they get them involved in the process and to learn how to be responsible. And then on the other hand, my husband was listening to a woman talk about who was in the walk away movement. And she said she used to be a liberal, and her family got into a little financial trouble. I think her husband lost his job. So she went down to apply for, I think, what's food stamps. And they tried to talk her into getting a divorce because they could give her more money if she didn't have a husband. And when she said she liked her husband, they said, oh, we don't actually check to see if you're still living with him. You just have to legally leave him. And this lady just left. Okay? And she actually got, I think it was the food stamps. She was on them for 3 months. Her husband got a new job. She went to try to get off him, and they tried to talk her into staying on for a year till the review came around. She's like, I don't need him anymore. Well, the religious group would never have tried to talk the person out of having a husband. One of the ladies who was in Mary's shelter was a woman whose husband was still in Africa, and so he couldn't get into America yet to come support her. They didn't tell her to leave her husband. They just helped her till he came, And I think that's a good example of the difference between private and public charity.
There's actually a video I did kind of on this topic, and I won't go into the whole thing because the video exists and people can go see it. And I'll put a link. But it's
in the bottom there, comments.
It's called "Do Not Steal Another's Pain," and basically, the short version, it's wrong to steal. It's wrong to steal from other people. It's wrong to take from someone else what they earned. And something we seem to have forgotten is that sometimes people who are suffering, people who are in pain, have done something to earn that pain. And if you try to help someone if you try to help someone when they put themselves in that situation, if you do it in a way that you're trying to take away the pain, all that's doing is letting them continue to do it, and the overall situation will continue to get worse.
It's like the difference between repenting and sinning, and sinning and being sorry. I'm sorry, but I'm still sinning is very different than I've repented and I want to pull myself out of the situation. And it's also a little bit like, painkillers versus helping you with your broken leg. You know what I mean? And I think the private charities are in a better situation to interact and see this person is really sincere. I mean, not that you can't be fooled. Anybody can be fooled. But if you're there interacting with them and you're not worrying about, using a certain amount of money in order to keep your government amount of money that comes in, like the way the government does things right now, you can look and go, I don't think this person is really using this well, versus, look, I think this person is really prospering. That's why I love the fact that Mary's Shelter makes them, do little tasks and work. They have to show that they're cooperating, that they're, making up for where they've gone before, So.
Yeah, and that's the good way to do it. You don't have to just, throw somebody in the backpack and carry them all the way around. You could just give them a hand up. You don't have to just, pack them as freight. Like, well, I guess I got to drag you along with me. Hey, like that, just reach out and be like, here you go, buddy. I mean, my dad, we ran a trailer park. God, Lord save us. That was the worst time in my life. But we ran a trailer park. And this one guy got upside down on his rent and stuff, like to the tune of like $2,000, which I'm like, Dad, how do you let him get that far without evicting him? The rent is $200 a week or month. I forget. Yeah. It's $200 per rent period. So they've missed 10 rents at this point. I'm like, why do they still live here? But my dad says, you know what? It's fine. I need some help working around. We got some handyman jobs need doing. He can do them. So he made a deal with the guy. I'll reduce your rent. It's like, I'll pay you $10 an hour to do these handyman jobs, just sort of, maintenance tasks around the place. And you can do that work with me on your, on days you're not working, and we'll get it worked out and I won't evict you. The guy managed to work off $2,000 of debt.
Good for him. Good for him. And
he cried his eyeballs out when my dad was like, "Yeah, actually, you're free and clear, man. You don't owe us." And he said, "You never thought anybody'd do that for him." And so I was like, you know what? I admired my dad for that.
That is exactly the kind of thing that makes exactly. You know what I mean? And if the guy had not done the work, then your dad might have had to take a different stance. But he's given him that option, and it gives him his dignity. It lets him, there's a movie I really love called, or I should say, there's a scene in a movie that I really love called. It's in the movie Cinderella Man. And if you're not familiar with it, it's a boxing movie with I can't think of his name. Russell Crowe. Excellent movie, but boxing movie set in the 30s. My grandfather was a boxing instructor during that period and actually had a secret technique that he taught people. So I kind of enjoyed the movie. We have a family secret technique. It's really cool. And it's called the Cosmic Punch. There's even like an article online somewhere about it where somebody was talking about having learned it from my grandfather. But
I'll have to remember never to get into a fist fight with one of your sons.
Yeah, my mom was trying to teach it to them just while we were on vacation. So it's maybe one of the days they'll actually learn it. But the point is, so in this movie, he gets into financial trouble during the Depression, and he ends up having to go and get public money, and then he goes and pays it back. And the lady who he pays it back to was like, "What?" Because a lot of people didn't do that. But it really struck me, and I think about it often, because when I read older books that were written, because when I was young, a lot of things I read were written, maybe 50, 100 years, 200 years before when I was living. There's a strong sense of people not wanting to take charity. Pride is involved in, and I don't mean pride in the bad sense. I mean their dignity is involved in not wanting to take charity. And that doesn't mean that sometimes they can't, or doesn't mean that, something. I mean, it's something like what your dad offered was a great option because it was charity, but it also wasn't. It let him, keep his dignity. But nowadays, people have just lost that. They've just lost. Well, and they want all that they can get, rather than thinking, "Hey, I'm supposed to hold my own. I'm supposed to do my own work here."
Well, yeah, and that's attendant to the loss of shame. I mean, previously, being on the dole, being a charity case was shameful.
Right.
Hey, you're not, living up to the standards, of your social contract. You are not, if you're a male and a father or a husband or even just a male, it's like you're not living up to the duties of manhood. You are less a man than the others who are standing on their own 2 feet, even if they're having tougher times. Tightening up the old belt loops, making sure the kids eat, and then you go hungry. You're taking the soft option. Well, these days you can't be ashamed. God,
right. Right.
I'm sorry. Whatever non-specific higher power you ascribe your belief in, be that God, government, or yourself, have mercy if you ever find yourself ashamed, because that's terrible and that's bad for your self-esteem. But no, shame is good. Shame is pain, and pain tells you when you have gone astray. I wander in a bramble thicket. I need that pain to tell me, "Excuse me, sir, you have moved into hostile territory. You should probably reverse course and get out of here." When the bear bites me, I need that pain to be like, "This large animal is upset with your presence. Maybe you should vamoose if you can recover the mangled remains of your leg." Shame is the same way. Hey, you're making bad choices in life. Maybe you should make better ones. The thing you are doing right now, stop. Don't do something else. In fact, take your inclinations, which are shameful and bad, do the other thing. The thing that you think is stupid, do that because it's actually wise, because you're a fool. You should be ashamed of yourself. But we can't do that these days. And so you end up with people that gleefully sponge off the largesse of society and see nothing wrong with it. And then you get the boosters of them that try and get them to divorce their husbands to get more benefits.
And going back to the Dane-Geld, and so your dad, let's go back to your dad. So your dad, do you think that guy would have felt better about himself if your dad had said, "Go get government money, go on charity"? He would not have felt good about himself. I mean, he probably felt much better being able to earn back his dignity and being able to pay off and being clear. So the more we tell people, oh, don't feel bad, just accept this and accept this and accept this, it doesn't make them feel good. It undercuts their self-esteem because at some level we know. I mean, I'm not saying that we've had people help us with charity, and I'm not saying people shouldn't take charity if they need it, but I do think that we try to, we've had times where we gave to other people when we had a little more, we give to friends. Passing it on in that way, I think, we have to do sometime. It can be hard to accept, but, then you turn around, you try to help somebody. But going around thinking that you're supposed to be, like, getting sucked into these cycles, it's very much like the Dane-Geld, where the dignity of what used to be extremely solid Black religious families in the 60s. And there are quotes that the Democrats deliberately broke the families up. They deliberately offered them money for the purpose of making them more reliant on the government. And they turned them from these solid, strong families into people who are not living as happy lives as they did when they were, relying on each other, relying on God.
Their groves based in crime-based murders and drug problems. I mean, their society, Black American society has collapsed. It's gone. It is it really parallels the state of their cities.
Well, and the other thing,
they're collapsing and destroyed along with the societies in them because you cannot build a society on this, shameless mooch population. You need people who put in more than they take.
Right. And so I would say maybe
you can actually get something going here.
Black Democrat families. I mean, there are still Black families out there who held on, who didn't give in, who have solid, but it's just that a lot of them were undermined. And they weren't helped. And it's not just Blacks. I mean, this is happening all over the country. With the example I gave of the woman who was told to divorce her husband is a perfect example. I mean, she held out, but somebody else might have done it,
Well, and another thing, kind of connected to what we've been talking about, but also going to the other side of the poem, it's people don't actually talk about this very often, but like what's going on today, food stamps and all these different welfare programs. I sometimes get the sense that a lot of it is just trying to buy peace, because if the EBT cards, if none of them started working tomorrow, a lot of our cities, you would start getting riots pretty quickly. And a lot of our politicians know this, and the whole thing is, even if it was actually helping them at the moment, which it's not, we don't have any money. This is all imaginary money. And this can't keep going on. This is going to go away. Maybe we could do it carefully and deliberately rather than having it happen catastrophically.
Yeah, and there's no easy answer. I mean, even the thing I was saying earlier about the moms, unwed moms, single moms, we call them now. If we went, okay, tomorrow we're going to stop all payments to single moms, obviously that would be catastrophic because there are people who have, in good faith, relied on what we offered them. But I keep thinking about that thing in Sweden. I keep imagining a young couple. You're a young couple, and it's probably true in America, but I think of the Sweden thing because that's where I heard about it. And you want to get together and you want to have kids, and you look and you go, okay, well, if we get married, we won't get nearly as much money as if I go on this government thing. So what seems like a wise choice to the individual, isn't the wise choice to bring in more money to help with the kid? But then you don't really have a family, and then there's no real reason you're to stay together if something changes. So each time you offer an incentive, it seems in the short term like a wise thing for the person who's accepting the incentive, but now they're relying on it. So we can't, as you say, we can't just switch it off. We'd have to do something at least like say, we're not taking on more people, but we're going to continue with what we promised or something. It seems to me that getting out of it is a very difficult thing. Similar to what you were saying about the cities. You don't want to get them into that situation, but you can't just stop it either, because you have whole people who have their whole lives are right now being taken care of by something the government offered.
And once you have paid him the Dane-Geld, you'll never be rid of the Dane.
Exactly. And once you start paying for unwed moms, you get unwed moms.
Yeah. And it's called a perverse incentive is what you're talking about,
right.
Jagi.
Exactly.
It makes more fiscal sense on the individual level to just be like, man, I would have to work. I have to get me a decent job and work a lot of hours to make up on getting for free by being, an irresponsible mooch.
My mother-in-law.
That's a lot easier to do than to get up every day and go to work. So I think that's what I'm going to do. And again, whereas that, the program was designed to operate amongst the people with shame. To say that, if I stay home all day and let everybody else work while I do nothing and still get the money, that would be shameful. But these days, again, not. But we need to start weaning people. All these societal infants that just kind of go around and scream and holler and do whatever they want and don't produce need to be weaned.
My stepmother-in-law used to be a teacher.
Get them off the proverbial, get them off proverbial fiscal teat and actually, get them out there chewing on their own, chewing their own substance.
So my stepmother-in-law used to be a teacher in an area and some of her students were low-income students up in upper New York. And she said she would try to motivate them, and the kids would be like, well, why in the world do I have to go out and learn anything or do anything or care about what you're teaching me? All my dad does is sit around and drink on welfare all day. And it was really hard to motivate them because they didn't have any image that they had to achieve anything. And, I should say the opposite of it is that her husband, my father-in-law, was once involved some years ago in checking out welfare cases. And he said the ones he checked out, and he's a pretty, he's not a liberal guy. He's not a guy who's going to, it's not a soft guy. But he said, to be fair, that the majority of the cases he checked out, the people really needed the help. So I'm not saying that, everybody out there is abusing the system. But there's a potential for really abusing the system. And for falling into a generational trap.
No, and that's the thing about lifelong benefits is, they corrode your self-reliance. Basically, humans are not meant to... Let me start over and frame this differently. It turns you into a domesticated human.
Yeah.
Actually become the proverbial cattle. You become the herd. Humans are meant to be feral beasts. We are meant to be out there, striving and competing and fighting for what we can get. And not violently, not, hurting one another. Like I said, not in the actual way, but we're not meant to, just be fed. We're not meant to belly up to the trough.
Yeah.
We're meant to take down, to pursue and take down our substance and be like, hey, let's do this thing. We're going to go out there and you know what? Those guys want to get it first. Well, we're going to get it, and if they lose, well, hey, good contest, boys. You can have, here's a shank of the zebra, but we're getting the ribs. Right.
Well, I haven't listened to him in a while. I probably should. But something Dave Ramsey, one of Dave Ramsey's phrases, leave the cave, go out there, club something to death, and bring it home.
Exactly.
There's another side to this too.
Come to us, but then once we grow up, we're supposed to go get it ourselves.
Right.
We're not supposed to be domesticated and brought down to where we're just kind of sitting there all doe-eyed, like, give me some. Oh, good, the gruel. Yes, please give me my gruel, sir.
We used to all strive to become mature and be recognized as adults. It used to be there'd be big ceremonies and stuff, And even in civilized countries, there were things like girls put their hair up or down or whatever, depending on which country. And now everybody just celebrates being immature. Well, adults are not supposed to be immature. It took me years. I fell into that trap when I was younger. It took me years to realize that, we're not supposed to be immature. We're supposed to be mature. We're supposed to be striving to, not that we can't, we don't, that we succeed all the time. But one of the point I wanted to make was there's another problem, I think, with the government doing things instead of charity. And that is, in the Bible, we're called upon to tithe. We're called upon to help our neighbor. We're called upon to be charitable. If the government's doing it for us, we are not being charitable.
No.
We're not being given that opportunity to be called upon to do more for somebody else, And many of the people who vote, like if I go out and I give money to my local food drive or my local church or whatever, I'm being charitable. I'm making that choice, usually because I want to help somebody. But a lot of the people who vote for the government things, they're often doing it with there's a sense of envy and of, gee, I want to make that rich guy pay. Not, hey, I want to pay more, but you know what I'm saying? So I think that the government charity from that side of view, it's almost like being the country who should be standing up to fight off the Vikings and instead you're being lazy and just paying. Well, you're also losing all the benefits that come from standing up for yourself. In the case of charity, I think we're losing the benefits that come from learning to be a charitable person.
Well, and it's to take it down to like the very personal level, like there's a big difference between seeing someone hungry and giving him your sandwich, and seeing someone hungry and saying to someone else, because you're not even doing this part, saying to someone else, hey, go take that guy's sandwich and give it to him.
Yeah, right.
Like that's the difference in what's going on there, and it's
somebody could give this guy a sandwich. Oh, not me. I've only got one sandwich.
I had several friends who were really happy when the Obamacare came about because they had some sort of illness that made it hard for them to get insurance, and now they could. And I have a lot of sympathy for that. I'm not going to say in any way that that's not a huge struggle. But I had another friend who runs a small company, and his company was going to hire a new person. They were going to take on a new employee, which is a pretty cool thing if you're a small company. And the change in the price in their insurance as a company was so great, it absorbed the entire salary they would have given to this new person. So somewhere, there's a whole person who never got a job because this other person now had other people paying for their expensive insurance. Their insurance didn't actually become less expensive. They just robbed somebody else to get it. And it's so popular right nowadays to go, what, you want to take insurance away from these good people? And as I say, some of the people I know, I have a lot of sympathy for them. But honestly, it's not these other people's, it's not the job of the person who lost that other job to pay for that person's insurance, Sure, you can have a charity thing. There's a Christian insurance thing I don't know if you guys know about, but it's Christian families just, instead of having insurance, they pay each other's medical bills. It's like you go into it, and it's like, let's say your amount is $500 a month. You just send it to a family, and they tell you who to send it to and stuff like that. So there are things you can do if you need to help somebody who has a problem, But randomly bopping a guy over there on the head and taking his money is not morally the right way of doing it.
No. And another thing you lose with this sort of, top-down, entitlements-based, quote, generosity, you lose the community building. I mean, if just a bunch of government contractors show up and fix everything, then okay, I've never helped my neighbors. I haven't strolled over of an afternoon and been like, well, hey, George, what's wrong with your lawnmower? Oh, you need some spark plugs? I got spark plugs. Give me a second.
Yeah.
You haven't been like, man, it's like, wow, geez, man, tree through the roof, huh? And then you get together, you climb up there, and slap some shingles on that bed. You don't get the chance to become Mr. Government Man. Me first. Me first.
Yeah. And I noticed that
So that's just another rip in the social fabric that you get with all of this.
1 second. Jagi, are you hearing him clearly right now?
No, he's kind of all broken up, and he looks kind of like a robot.
Nate, Nate, we're getting some technical difficulties. Talk again a second. Can you hear us?
He seems to be frozen. I wonder if he lost the connection. Hopefully he will hang up and get back or something like that.
Yeah, here.
Hey, come back to us.
Let me try sending him a message. Let him know what's...
Maybe you can get to him that way, or maybe he's just his system's frozen up for a moment or something.
Okay. I am now speaking like a human being, and I am not moving.
I can hear you okay, but you're still frozen like a robot.
Hang on. Yeah, try hanging up and coming back on, right back on.
I can see you guys.
We can hear you. It sounds awful though. Okay, so he's gonna come back in a second. By the way, I should have looked this up before we started. Do you know what the dates on there are referring to? And we are back. Okay.
And we apologize for our momentary technical strangeness there. Here we are.
And now I'm getting you as automatic subtitles. I didn't have that before. Turn subtitles off. There we go. Okay.
All right. So where?
Hey, look at that! I fixed my picture.
Where did you lose me?
Let's see.
We were hearing you.
I heard part of you. A lot. I mean, I could hear what you were saying. I'm trying to remember now. You were talking about government contractors, I think, about when I lost you.
Okay. So with this whole top-down, entitlement style, quote, charity, big bunny ears on that one. You lose a lot of the sort of community building you would get otherwise. You can't.
Oh, right. That's what you're
band
saying.
together.
Yeah. No, I did hear that. And,
you don't go about your neighbors and be like, hey guys, the thing that's many an American specifically and a Cajun, in even a more specific sense, is the Cajun Navy. But
lost you again. While we're waiting for him to hopefully come back on.
Okay, now we got
you for a moment there.
Killed the connection. I can't believe it. But anyway, like I said, the Cajun Navy, right? They're like, government keeps telling them, you guys need to stop. And they're like, are you really going to arrest volunteers that are here to help with a disaster? Or are you just going to get the hell out of our way? And then they did a better job than the government.
Yeah. Well, one thing I've noticed is the areas that are the worst are the cities because the local connections between people break down. I remember somebody recently had a meme going around with some of my liberal friends where they were saying that they were pointing out that Republican-run states were the poorest. And I remember thinking, you have that backwards. It's not that they're poor because they're Republicans. It's that they're Republicans because they're wise enough to know they don't have a lot of money to spend and they're poor. So they're using their money efficiently. And it's not that the Democrats make there be more money. It's that when they have money, they start spending it like crazy.
Well, and the other thing with that, because I like you can absolutely see this in places like San Francisco, or not from personal experience, just from things I've read. Like, if depending what measure you use, there's like a couple of different statistical ways you can look at like the average. And if you have a few people who have an enormous amount of money, and you have a lot of people who are very poor, if you take the average, it still looks like people are rich in this area, But no, it's that you have a few people who are very rich and a lot of very poor people.
You're taking a flat statistical average instead of using a box and whisper plot to figure out, where your true mean is. What's sort of the most repeated figure there? Is it the 5 billionaires, or is it the 75,000 people who make like $14,000 a year? Because there's a lot more weight on one end of the scale.
The concept that the meme tried to put across, which was the idea that they had more money because they were Democrat, is exactly the opposite. You know what I'm saying? It was the guys who were fiscally trying to be wiser who weren't going to go in for all that crazy spending, and that's why they seem poorer. But the guys, you know what I'm saying? So it's only the guys who were richer could afford all that crazy spending stuff. So, they were trying to say, oh, if you vote Democrat, you'll get richer. And that's not the way it works.
Oh.
So there's something, by the way, which we had just started talking about when the video cut out last time. And I actually tried looking this up. And, it's from Wikipedia. I guess I should go Infogalactic instead, but I never installed the thing to automatically kick me over there.
I have that. Let me see if in fact, I can only get Infogalactic.
But anyway, so it says the poem is subtitled AD 980 to 1016. That's not a subtitle. What would that be? Anyway, and it says in 978, Ethelred the Unready was crowned king of England. In 980,
that's a great name.
Small companies of Danish adventurers carried out a series of coastline raids against England. The raids continued, and in 991, Ethelred paid the Danes in silver to stop raiding and to go away. The Danes thought this an excellent idea and returned year after year to demand more. The practice only ceased in 1016 when the Scandinavian ruler Canute the Great invaded England, won its crown, and established control over the country. So, actually exactly like he says in the poem, the only way, one of the most obvious ways that this program ends is that your nation is lost. These people you have been paying money to stop bothering you end up just conquering you.
Think of it. You're giving them money. What are they doing with it? They're buying supplies and increasing their weapons.
Yeah. Man, this guy mugged me the other day with like a crappy prop knife. So I gave him the money and saw him again the other day. Oh yeah, is he doing better? Yeah, he mugged me with a much shinier knife.
Exactly. I mean, here you are, Canute the Great's out there, and he sends, his 10 guys, and you pay him money. He comes back with 20 guys. He says, well, hey, I can hire more guys. I'm going to send 40 guys next time.
And in a couple of years, he's going to have a gun. So, and then, another year after that, he'll have a gun and 2 other guys with knives. So,
Yep.
Congratulations. And that is how crime organizes.
But it's a perfect it's a perfect example of what we're talking about. And I know that period was the period when the Vikings were particularly, I guess that was a prime Dane-Geld period for paying off Danes and getting more.
So that was 1016. The Canute conquered and took the crown. They had it for 50 more years, and then William the Conqueror came in, and suddenly England became French. Which is why we have half of our language, and now we're moving on, digressing into the history of the English language, which is a fascinating topic. But for those of you who don't know, about a third of what we consider English today comes from French. So,
from the north.
Which
Tolkien... it's funny. We talked earlier about racism. One of the things that I notice, I often think about when people talk about racism, is the Normans and the Saxons hated each other for many hundreds of years, but nobody cares about that anymore. It actually got completely put behind us. These things can be completely put behind us, particularly if we stop rubbing people's faces all the time.
Well, but the thing, part of that is, like, at least in England, they intermarried and ended up interbreeding enough that there was no, there largely was no distinguishable difference. And that's a process that takes a lot of time.
Takes a
and
long
also,
time. That's very true.
And the other part, they started out looking a lot alike. You couldn't tell just by looking at someone.
At the time. I'll go in the other direction from that and say a friend of mine visited China and he told me a story, and I'm sad to say I don't know if this is a real story or if it's a Chinese proverb, but he talked about a place where people lived and they had painted their sidewalks. I think it's something that actually happened in China at one point. They had their sidewalks painted different colors, and the different colors apparently represented certain very deep religious or political differences. And when asked why they had done this, they said, well, they wouldn't know who to hate if they couldn't see. While it's true that they do look alike, there are a lot of problems in life where people look alike, but there's still a lot of problems. You know what I mean? So the looking is only one of many different issues that comes up.
The thing is, though, with the interbreeding, right, of the two peoples there in England, we're not a blood and soil country like these European, freaking hedgerows. America is an idea, and if you sign on to the idea of America, you have no grounds to hate anybody for whatever superficial reason. You don't. You have no. There's no lever for you to grab onto. To hate the black guy or the Hispanic guy or the Arab guy. Maybe still not like the French guy very much because he's all snooty, but that's because he's snooty, not because he's French.
That's because of him.
Right?
Yeah, you meet another French guy who's just great. There's a book that made an enormous impression on me, and it's called School of Darkness. And it's by Bella Dodd, who was one of the people who was involved in starting the school system in America. And she was a young woman who came over from Italy and became a communist. And at the end of her period of two decades at the center of the Communist Party in America, she was convinced by Bishop Fuller Sheen, one of the big Catholic bishops at the time, to come back to the Catholic Church. And she wrote this book about her experience. And one of the things she talked about was when she came over to America, all these different, like she lived in an area where there was all these different people who in Europe wouldn't get along. They got along just fine, and nobody knew why they were getting along. And the communists, they said at that time the workers were pretty happy in New York, like 1920s. The races were getting along. The communists had to use the papers to try to convince people they weren't happy and weren't getting along to try to get, otherwise nobody wanted to join the Communist Party. Because they were happy. They didn't want to join unions. They were happy. They were making more money than they'd ever made before. And that her book was really an eye-opener for me. But one of the things that really struck out to me was how well the racists got along, because they had the American ideals that they all wanted to join in. One of the reasons that I'm a bit more worried about immigration now than I used to be. I used to be, 100% anybody can come anytime. And I still feel very kind of open-hearted. But you have to have an America where we have these values that we're all pushing and we're all working towards. Or there's no blending together, If you're inviting people in, but you're just telling them to keep their, Germany just recently said, okay, we have to admit that this inviting people in and letting them live their own ways is a failure. They're not joining us. They're not blending in. They're just creating a ghetto,
Well, and the other thing with that also, it, goes back to what we were saying before, part of the reason that people assimilate to a larger culture is because they have to survive. Yeah. And if you just hand over money just for breathing, they don't have to.
You don't have to
change. They don't have to learn because it's painful. Who wants to? I don't want to learn a new language. It takes a lot of time when you're an adult. If you're a kid, it's a lot easier. But
how do you learn my language?
But
Well,
it's
no.
one of the reasons I'm against everything being in Spanish. I mean, I guess I understand, and I really, yeah, it's really hard. It's really nice if you go somewhere and things are in your language. But my daughter speaks Chinese. So she would go to school, and the teachers would teach in English and sometimes in Spanish to the class meant for kids of another language, of which a few of them were Japanese or Chinese or something. And these kids aren't getting any benefit from the fact that she's speaking in Spanish some of the time. You know what I mean? The kids who aren't Spanish and the kids who are Spanish are learning English less quickly because they're getting this extra help. Well, we can't have it in every single language out there. And the countries that have 2 languages or more have all sorts of problems. I mean official language. I don't mean like, yeah, you can talk on the street in any language you want, but so it really seems to me that we're not benefiting people in the long run if we're making it so they come here and they don't have to learn a common tongue.
So, by
It's
the way,
interesting how many. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, are either of you familiar with Tom Lehrer?
Yeah.
He was a
Yes.
comedian slash musician. Because some of this was just reminding me of his song National Brotherhood Week.
I don't know
Nate,
if
have
I
you
know
heard?
that one?
No.
I don't know if I know that one. Maybe you can put it in the comments. You
Well,
can put the link. Unless you
it's
think you can
only
play.
it's only 2 minutes. I'm not sure. I know I could put the screen up because I have it up here on YouTube right now. I know I could put the screen up. I'm wondering whether I could
You want to try it?
yeah, sure. I'll see if I can show the whole thing. How do I do this? Let's see. So go over here. And then full screen? That do it? No, because I can't wait. There we go. Okay. Sorry, one moment. I'm working out the details here. Not practiced with screen sharing in general, actually. Let's see. Where is that? There we go. Share screen. Application window. It's not there. Okay. I did that wrong. One moment. Sorry.
Take your time. We can chat while we're waiting.
Okay, wait. Here we go. Maybe.
I do love. There are many of his songs. We were big fans in college. We used to listen to him all the time, but I don't remember that one offhand.
Where is it? I had it. Okay, wait. Stop that. Share screen. Application window. There we go. Okay. So, do you see that?
Don't see it yet, but it took a moment or two when you put the poem up. So wait, something's coming up. Okay.
Okay, and let me know if you hear this, because if you don't hear this, then nobody else is going to.
I can hear it. Now I'm not hearing it.
Yeah, I'm not hearing.
Okay.
I heard it for a moment and then it stopped.
Okay, I'll have to work on the details of how things like that work if I want to incorporate something like that in the future. Anyway, it's funny. It's Tom Lehrer, who is when was that? That had to be like the 50s.
He was a Harvard professor, wasn't he? He was one of the first guys who experimented with LSD. He was looking into how it worked and what it was, I believe. And he was just hilarious. Yeah. I'm pretty sure. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure that he was on the cutting edge with that. And he just wrote a series of really funny, very kind of, a bit sardonic songs on many different topics.
So yes, National Brotherhood Week is a pretty fun one, but you'll have to see that another time. Okay, we are actually coming up on, we're over an hour. I don't know how long because the other part got cut off. So, and it's an hour later where you are. So, I think we've covered most of what I wanted to say about this.
I do too.
Nate, did you have any last thoughts you wanted to put in?
Well, while he's thinking, let me just say it's been a delight. I really enjoyed, covering this. As I said, I keep thinking about this poem because of these things in our society, and I think you guys did a great job of, discussing all these points and how this is really an issue today for us. So, thought it was
Nate?
hold on. Nate vanished. There he is.
Yeah. My final thought is the hardest person to resist paying the Dane-Geld to is yourself. Because you will want to take it easy on yourself. You will want to pamper yourself. You will want to take the easy way out because, let's face it, it's the easy way out. We like easy. But it's not usually, and actually it is usually not, the right way to go. Oftentimes the hard way is the right way. And you will learn from that. You will grow from that. You will ache from that. But in the end, rather than poisoning your soul with ease, you will temper your virtues and become strong. And so when the temptation arises and you want to, pay yourself the Dane-Geld and take the easy way out, don't. Be better than that. Be stronger than that.
That's excellent. I can't add anything to that.
Okay, well, thank you, Nate, again for joining us, and thank you, Jagi. It's been very fun. You are, by the way, the second female guest on the show.
Well,
you are following Rachel Fulton Brown, who hopefully should be appearing with us again soon. But anyway. Thank you both for joining us tonight, and God be with you.
God be with you guys too.